Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 619, recorded live on Friday, November 20th. I'm your host, Patrick. We've got a full house of guests this week. This is going to be a lot of fun. We'll just kind of go across the board here. Nimvind.
Merry Nimbus.
I think I got the person the farthest away from his push to talk button with that. Samius Gurobo.
Greetings and salutations.
Strimtom.
Good morning.
And Vooduspyce.
I'm not worthy.
They're all worthy. So this will be fun. It's I always really enjoy getting a lot of people on the show, especially when we're going to talk about some juicy stuff, which we'll get into in a minute. This week's screenshot: Adumar kneels before Loth in the 489th screenshot of the week. Mad props. I really like this screenshot. It's very artistic and very cool. Except for one thing, and that it's really part of the reason why we're running a little bit late was I was trying to map out my display here, and it's busy. The screenshot's a little busy to makes putting things in relationship here a little trickier than normal, but it's a beautiful screenshot. Well done. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will maybe be next weekend. For those of you who are unaware, Thanksgiving is this coming week in the U.S., I don't believe Strimtom, when's Canadian Thanksgiving? It's a different time, right?
Yeah, it happens in early October.
Okay, so that already happened.
Yeah.
But in any case, American Thanksgiving and all, and turkey, and so we may not have a show next week just because of the holiday weekend. We'll kind of play it by ear, but you can stay updated by following us on social media. At DDOCast on Twitter is the best place, or on our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. On the podcast this week, we've got a little bit of news. Didn't get a show out last week, so we'll talk about, but there wasn't really any news to talk about anyway. So we got this week's news, a patch. But the big thing is we're going to be reviewing Update 48, which is the Fables of the Feywild. So that should be, I think, a lot of fun. And that's why we got all these really awesome people here. So we'll start with the game news for the week, and perhaps the biggest news. Hey, the Wish for Shifter Memories is now available in the store. So if you don't want to play a shifter, you just want to play whatever you are and use a wish and be on your merry way for the next time, you can do that now. So that's really easy. And then the other big thing this week was we had a update. The Update 48 Patch 1 was released Tuesday, November 17th. Of special note, I'll go through kind of the highlights here. There's sagas now, so heroic and legendary sagas. They are located behind the bed area, where it's kind of the second chain and Lord Arden are in the Winwood Hall.
Behind the bed.
Well, I mean that's like it's one of the most prominent things in that area is the big 4-post bed, right?
That's where my saga is too.
Fair warning: if you did the quest before the patch, you have to do them again. It doesn't backdate those completions, which is a bit unfortunate. On the plus side, it does have a weapon aura in there. You may remember from Ravenloft and Sharn, one of the things in the pack orders, I think the ultimate one,
it was
in both of them, was a glamour aura. Well, in this case, they decided to put that into the saga, which I think I like better. A little more accessible for people to get. And I think that you can also, I think, get an artifact out of there. I know at least one person had an artifact in their list. XP, Guild Renown, I assume skill tomes, but I haven't turned one in yet.
Yep. Skill
Yep.
tomes, and you can also get the Ferro Crystal crafting component. They come in stacks of 10 to help you get closer to crafting when your things,
Oh.
like the Ravenloft Vistani totems.
I do
Sure.
have to admit, I only have looked at the Heroic Saga, and I didn't know that there was a weapon ore in there. I must have missed it.
Yeah, so that's what's going on. Oh, before I get too much further on the show, production note: I am using a new software, so if you're watching the video, you might see a couple like little oopsies as I'm kind of learning the new area, and they're still balancing the audio. I think I'm in a really good place with the audio balance, but we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks just to kind of make it all work. Other stuff, news and notes. Favored weapons gained via Dwarven Axe training, Book of War, and a couple other things now work properly with Favored Souls, Grace, and Knowledge of Battle ability. That's something that they had mentioned before that they were going to fix. And I believe that should mean that all of the Favored weapon stuff is now working correctly. They also corrected an issue that was causing too many effects to stack up on characters. This should help improve game performance. That's something that kind of crops up every now and then, right? I feel like we see that release note about once a year.
Oh, yeah. Well, they add new effects, and then if somebody forgets to tick a box or something when they make a new one, and then all of a sudden the game just starts running away with it.
Yeah. The Illusionary Sprite is now a familiar option in the Feydark Illusionist tree. If you were waiting for that, you can do that now. Randomly generated armor, robes, breaches, docents, and shields now have a lower chance to appear with spell power and turn undead properties, and a higher chance to appear with defensive effects. Note that orbs remain unchanged. So, I think that was something that will be helpful for people. There was a comment about the breaches. That's outfits. I guess internally they sometimes refer to them as breaches because of kind of some of the elements of them. I saw Steel Star word about that. I thought that was kind of funny.
I did ask about this as a follow-up to that. And so the effects will appear less often, but when you get a special prefix, something that has something spell power related or turning related, those things will still drop at the same rate as before. So you might not find an armor with a single sacred effect or a single spell power. When you get that special prefix, Silver Flame is just as likely to drop as it was before, and some of the spell power related ones.
So it's just
So
the
the good
basic
effects
ones.
still exist. Yeah, exactly.
I like this change. Even better. Augments with the sheltering benefit now also apply magic resistance rating. That's good. Resistance augments now scale correctly. If there's anything in these notes that you guys want to jump in that I skipped, let me know. They did correct descriptions for spell focus and sheltering augments. The spell focus ones are kind of important because that's the stacking DC bonus. That was going to not stack, and then it was going to stack, and in between there, the description got changed, and then did not get changed back. So it was just a description thing. It wasn't. The effect has continued to stack.
Did we already talk about the familiar edition that they did for the Feydark?
The Illusionary
Illusionist?
Sprite? Yep.
Yeah, I have, and it's so annoying because like Linabelle, when I brought it up to Linabelle, she's like, "Okay, non-issue," but there is in fact an imp and quasit that you could see in DDO. The traditional familiars is special familiars is imp, quasit, brownie, pseudo-drag. We have 3 of them, and then we added Redcap to the game, which is a miniature fey. We could just change its hat around and call it a brownie, and we could have had the traditional familiars, but no, they're like Spoon and a pixie and a pseudo dragon that has purple dust on it because it loves psychedelic 70s music, and then a toad with a hat. Those are your familiars. I'm like, when are these things familiars? Never. But that's just my, whatever. Ignore me.
We're
It
getting
wasn't
a
made of
lore
lore.
master's perspective.
Say,
I mean,
the
if
lore
we look
has
at
grown
a
on us.
classic example of something like Warlock Pacts, we got 3. and then they just added more out of nowhere. I don't think it's impossible that in the future they may decide to have, if they have the art asset, or maybe make a change based on your suggestion, to continue to add more familiars that we can pick from. Given that the fact that they did add this sprite. Now, granted, it's probably they wanted it initially, but maybe they'll do that. There's enough demand for it.
I will now form a petition.
I mean, have at it, man. Like, that's go for it, right? Let's see, where were we? Set bonus augments now have more information describing their sets. I haven't made any of these yet, so hopefully that is better, right? Like, we want it to be a little better. I know. Remember on the show we were talking about it in the preview. We weren't really sure what how
That was
some of
almost
it
a
worked.
month ago.
Yeah. So I think it's in a better spot. Hopefully. Let's see. The Crown of Summer and the Gloryborn Glove no longer have effects that are removed on death. That's important because if you die, you had to re-equip them to get the effects back, and that's no longer the case. Let's see. The Feywild landscape originally launched with a Slayer cap of 1,500. They increased that to 3,000 in both the heroic and the epic, which does kind of beg the question to me. I'm wondering if are there other explorer areas that have a different cap for heroic and epic, or are they all the same?
They're typically the same.
I'm wondering if there's a tech issue that prevents them from having different ones in heroic and epic.
I know that they said that, or Jerry said it during the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream this week because people asked about it, that it was something to do more with performance, both in something about the game performance and then also about how they want, like they don't want to have a bunch of orchards in the game.
Fair.
So they made that decision.
From the same live stream, they said that they handled it in a way that they never dealt with something before. They just told the system no or something like that. Or like they did something that they never did in DDO, which is kind of awesome actually, that they're learning to say no to their own game.
I don't know. I feel like 3,000 is probably a good number. It doesn't take too long to get. It still has value. It doesn't break a whole lot of other things. 3,000. It's a lot better than 1,500, anyways. So.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. A bunch of quests got a bunch of work. Particularly Needle in the Face stack. They did a lot of tweaking there. That's the one with Joy, the almost dragon, running around. So trying to make that a cleaner experience. So. Let's see. That was the update. And then with that update, it wasn't in the release notes. They did make a change in the Explorer area where 2 chests were adjusted to not appear until after the rares died in the Feywild landscape. That was adjusted due to Fey-twisted farming. What people would do is they would go in, look to see if that was a Fey-twisted chest. If it wasn't, they'd recall out, reset, and go and keep doing that. So they did this because in their view it's bad gameplay, bad for balance, bad for server performance, so they changed it. They also did not rule out doing more of those changes to make that consistent throughout the Feywild Explorer area. So we'll see if that happens. So that's what we got there. I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that, or anything else with the changes here?
Not really. The thing about the Fey Twisted makes sense. Like resetting and explorer areas constantly probably does have a bad impact on the game based on like how many monsters get spawned every time they have to do that.
I was surprised that they admitted it, and surprised that that's the case. That spawning a lot of mobs in Slayer zones does cause server lag. That in other people's instance, that was a revelation for me.
I think the way that Cordovon worded it in the Wednesday live stream is that it server lag, as in it takes a toll on the server itself, which makes it hard to perform all its performances that it needs to perform when it's performing.
I kind of wonder if how long the server holds on to an instance that you reset, like before it's able to kind of remove that from its processes and no longer need to hold on to information for it. Because if you can, if people are going out and doing a new instance every minute and the server holds on to that information for 10 minutes, then you're creating a lot of unnecessary burden on the servers.
I think it probably dumps that stuff right away, Patrick.
You think so?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for it to hang on to that stuff. No, it's all about the monster pathing.
Yeah, that was about to say it's monster pathing.
Yeah.
That people have started to understand now. It's something that I've been talking about for a long time, specifically with like hirelings and summons, which is also kind of came up. And then it, for me, when you had to ask the devs in last time, is when I picked up on this. So I've been harping on it pretty hard for a while, and then when people got it off of Jerry's stream, it like really opened their eyes, and I've been trying to explain to them this is the reason we can't have nice things. So people need to keep this into consideration going forward if they want nice things like better hirelings, better summons, more things to kind of follow you around and interact in the world. That this pathing problem could be a real issue going forward.
And that actually, if I remember right, goes straight to their physics engine. So it's kind of like a hardware software issue. They could start a GoFundMe, and I would definitely put $5 towards them getting a better one or whatever. Actually, no, their physics engine's handled by a third-person party. So, maybe go to Fiverr and find them another third-person party that would help, because it is kind of ridiculous that they would have to, for instance, we were talking about what Dev said about from hirelings. They said for us to get a true summoner class, the summons that we would have basically zero pathing, because spawning too many things with intellectual actual AI pathing would destroy the server and it just caused too much issues. This has actually been a aesthetic issue that we could have saw since the original Thunderholm Slayer area. The issue of mob spawning big masses into walls and them tracing mobs that weren't killed, pathing caused lag into the several instances, or at least load screens in Thunderholm. And so like this is if you weren't complaining enough and asking the right questions, this has been an issue for a long time that we could have known about.
I mean, it's the underlying issue behind why we have Dungeon Alert, right? Like, it's an incentive to not fill the dungeon with a whole bunch of mobs and create those problems. Similar things with why sometimes like summons and raids can be challenging, because you already have more players in that area and you get more things in there and that. And it's something I think that we've been dealing with for a long while in DDO. So in terms of monster pathing,
the thing is that they've never admitted it to the degree that they've admitted it in the last month.
Sure.
And that's what I think is opening people's eyes.
Yeah.
I believe that with all the issues that they're being open with lately, it's actually been like the last 7 months they started learning that having transparency, is that the word, is actually better for a lot of us who've been very loud with complaints. Like I found out the Thunderholm thing from a dev that was watching a stream that I happened to be on, and he was just like, actually, this is what was happening, and we were like, oh. And then I've if they just tell us what's happening, I only the stubborn mules would bray, and the rest of us would sit back and pray that the issues get fixed in future updates.
Maybe. I think we could go around in circles on that. Let's move on to some augment stuff. The first being that so they worked to correct some issues with the patch on how augments bind. That created more issues that they then went in and fixed, which we'll talk about in a minute. One of the things that came out of this is the binding status of Master's Gift. If you are unfamiliar with this, it's a fantastic augment. It's well worth your time to make one. What it is it's a 5% XP boost augment. If you're familiar with the Voice of the Master, the Mantle of the World Shaper, and there's an Ion Stone. What color is it? It's greenish. I don't remember.
Pale green.
Pale green. They all give an XP boost. There's another one actually. There's an item in Temple of Elemental Evil too that has it as well, although I don't remember what it's called. But it's that same 5% bonus. You can make that if you take a Voice of the Master and a Mantle of the World Shaper and 5 greater tokens of the 12, you can create a Master's Gift augment, which is colorless, 5% slot, that kind of a thing. It's a great augment. It's bound to character, and historically when you put it into something, it makes that item bound to character, even if it's bound to account permanently. There has been a workaround that I'm not sure where it is right now, in that if you put it into a crafted bound to account item, that item stayed bound to account.
It was any bound to account item.
Yeah. My mysterious cloak and bracers are all bound to account still.
Okay. In any case, a lot of folks kind of said, hey, there's a lot of talk about, hey, can we change the Master's Gift? So they're listening to that feedback. They're going to reevaluate whether or not it should stay bound to character. Maybe they'll make it bound to account. I'm totally pro it being bound to account. I think anything in this game that promotes people creating and investing in alts is a good thing, since most of the incentive right now is to invest heavily into 1 or 2 characters. So
We can still move the Master's Gift in the Dimensional Augment bag, which we've been able to do. So, but
take that, SSG.
At this point, there's no reason for them to have changed it to bind to character. Once it's in an item like that, because it's been the item made it bound to account for the longest time. Like, it's too late to change that.
I don't think it's. I don't think it's too late. The thing is, it's the reasoning behind bound to character Master's Augment, which I think is a silly reason, is that anything with that ability is bound to character. The necklace from Temple of Elemental Evil, the Master's Gift, the cloak of the Mantle of the World Shaper, all that is bound to character. It's a pretty powerful buff. But then again, you can go to a ship and pick it up. So like, where's the line? I believe it should be bound to account. I don't think anyone should be harassed about it. Like, I noticed that some devs were feeling pretty beat up after that debacle on the forums, but like, yeah, it should be bound to account.
Sure. Just getting some talk in the chat about not even those items shouldn't even be bound to character. I don't know. I feel like I'm a little indifferent to it. Although the epic Voice of the Master is bound to account.
It is.
So there's that. Like I said, I'm pro bound to account just because I feel like it being more accessible or more incentive to put it on another character, to run another character, right? I think that's kind of where I land.
Yeah, bound to account, please. That's my vote.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really care personally, mostly because the items are very, very easy to get. You can run Delirious on casual and get it in like 25 to 30 minutes. So, I mean, yes, absolutely. If it's bound to account, then it makes it more accessible. It's also very accessible right now. So whether they change it or keep it the same, I'm neither here nor there.
Those items are fairly accessible, but the Master's Gift, you got to run 5 epic raids that drop tokens, which is Chronoscope, Demon Queen, Vaughn, I think the epic versions of Lord of Blades and Master Artificer also drop them, but it's been so long. So I'm not entirely positive on that.
I thought that the fact that it was bound to character was a bug, and they reverted that. Is that not what we had in the last patch?
No, it was always supposed to be bound to character. Coco actually said specifically that was its intent. I'm not sure. Let's see if I can find that because I didn't pull that out. But it is intended to be bound to character.
So if you put one in now after the patch that reverted that change, it's bound. It makes your item bound to character instead of bound to account.
I'm not sure. I haven't done that.
Because the one that I have it in is a Slave Lord's trinket, and it's currently bound to account. So that's why I was just wondering.
It says bound to account, but you can't put it in your shared bank.
Okay, I'll double check on.
The item. So to be clear, when you have a master's gift in a bound to account item now, the item still says bound to account, but when you try to put it into your shared bank, it says you can't.
Okay.
Coco said that Master's Gift is correctly bound to character. It's the only, maybe a couple other he's just forgetting, augment that is intentionally bound to character. That's what they're going to reevaluate, of whether or not it should be bound to character, bound to account. So, we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Augments. So, bound to account items were becoming bound to character with augments erroneously. So you put a bound to account augment into a bound to account item, and it was becoming bound to character. Not intended behavior. Item. So here they had a hot fix yesterday. I don't even think they called it a patch, but it was a quick update to address this. So here's what they wrote. And just to be clear, this is something that happened between Tuesday's patch and Thursday's patch. So if you were slotting things outside of that time frame, should be fine. For items that currently have an incorrect binding status due to an augment being slotted into them prior to the patch will remain in that state unless the augment is unslotted. They are offering a free coupon code for 5 Jeweler's Toolkits with the coupon code 5JewelKit. Again, that's 5JewelKit. You get 5 Jeweler's Toolkits. That coupon code is available to redeem through November 27th. I'm a little surprised they didn't do it for a longer period of time, but you have until the 27th, so you still have another week. Augments that had a broken binding state at the time of the patch, but are either slotted inside of an item or in a bag when you log into the game for the first time following today's patch, will remain in that state after being removed from the item or bag until you next log in. Only items or augments that should the only items or augments that should have been in a broken state are the ones that underwent slotting process during the 2-day window between Tuesday for update 48 patch 1 and when they went down Thursday morning. So
I can attest that's not the case because I have one of those items that I've showed on my live stream.
Dope.
That you just like it wouldn't recognize the legacy unslaughter wouldn't recognize it, but it was something that I had made at least 6 months ago. So I don't know. I still have the item.
Interesting.
But the Jeweler's Toolkit will pull it out. The legacy unslaughter won't. But I haven't pulled it out yet, so I still have the item as proof.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the intention here is if you have one that's in a broken state, to take the augment out, log out, log back in, and that's supposed to fix everything. Although as Voodoo's saying is now, was that something that you had a problem with just during after this 2-day window, or that's something from a while back?
I'm still having the problem, and it wasn't something I did during the 2-day window. But I can, like I said, I can use one of these free Jeweler's Toolkit to make it work.
Great.
So problem solved.
Did you try unplugging and then plugging it back in?
I'll try that.
I feel like that's what he's going to do with the Jeweler's Kit, Nim. Pay attention.
Did you try putting French toast into your disk drive and throwing your computer out the window?
I did that. I always try that first.
French toast. What a waste of French toast.
It's an inside joke.
Coco Majobo also gave a little bit more information, saying, I apologize for the steps needed to manually resolve parts of this. They looked into what it would take to automatically resolve all items, and they determined that they could not safely get that out on a 1-day turnaround, and they did not think it an option to let this sit through the weekend, so they made a determination to use this method. I think that was probably a good choice. What what would that be, like 4 more days for people to break items? Fix it faster.
Yep.
Also, they knew it was likely that there would be a subset of players that ended up with more than 5 items impacted even during the relatively short window where this was possible to happen. As such, we've gotten customer service information on how to screen for items that were broken by this issue, and they should be able to grant some additional toolkits for those who have more items impacted. The process may take time to work through the queue, however. So, I think that's good, right? Like, if you are one of those people, put a ticket in. Hopefully, they'll get to you in the next month. I've heard that the customer service ticket queue is a little lengthy these days, but
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that they're at least addressing it. They have a mechanism to say that we recognize that some people may have slotted more than 5 items, and we're here. We have a way to fix that and address that. So that's good. The other bug that's going on, Cordovan confirmed that currently items in end reward lists and random loot in general are not displaying whether they have an augment slot until that character selects a reward or loots the item and then relogs with the item in their inventory.
Not true. I want to chime in here.
Oh.
There's a workaround.
Ooh,
If
I
you
love
open
workarounds.
the reward list and then relog and look at the reward list again, you can see if there are slots on there. I showed this on my live stream. You don't have to actually take any item on there. You can actually see it on the reward list. You just have to open it, relog, open it again. So that's a pain in the butt to do after every quest. So just do a
Sure.
whole chain, open all the reward lists, then relog, then look at them again.
Interesting.
Also, if you take your monitor into the bathroom, turn off the lights, and say Bloody Mary 3 times in the window, Bloody Mary will appear and tell you if the items have augments.
It works if you say Nimvind 3 times as well.
I heard that summons him to your place, and buyer beware with that.
Yeah, and then he drinks all your Bloody Marys.
And then you don't have any Bloody Marys for the weekend.
But in any case, so that's what's going on there. So if you haven't been seeing random loot with augments, that's why. It's broken. But it's good to know that you can log out and or you can relog before taking the end reward to see that. I agree, though, it is kind of a pain. All right, bonus days through November 22nd, you can get plus 30% challenge rewards boost. So if you're looking to run some challenges, now would be the time. The sales for the week: Hack and Stash, 20% off of Slayer boosts, Treasure Hunter elixirs, and select shared storage through November 27th. You can also get 5 Lesser Restoration potions with the coupon code 5 Lesser Resto, RESTO. All right, that will take us to community news. The 403rd Chronicle. This is from last week. This week's has not actually come out yet. We got a shout out for our Ask the Devs on Fables of the Feywild. And DDO Players News also interviewed the devs about Fables of the Feywild. So if you want to get more insight into kind of how they approach Feywild and some of the stuff that they enjoyed doing from that, you can watch those interviews. Axel created an in-depth review and overview of Fables of the Feywild, so you can check out that. Strimtom found a good mix between Feydark, Illusionist, and Cleric.
Yeah, I hadn't played Cleric in 3 years, so I thought it was time to dust it off. And I wanted to see what the Feydark Illusionist could do if I spent all my points in it, because if you play any of the charisma-based classes, they're like pretty good classes, so you want to cast like sorcerer spells or do like paladin stuff. But if you play charisma cleric, you don't want to do any of the cleric stuff except turn, so you can actually use the Feydark, and it was pretty fun.
I've noticed that Feydark Illusionist, when we were getting the previews of it, a lot of people were kind of down on it, but I've seen a lot of people using it. Not like really heavily invested, but the color spray is a really popular thing right now.
Oh man, you should have seen it in the council when we were looking at it. Well, like a lot of us were like, "No, ignore that person. Do this." And it was the Fade Dark Illusionist was probably like the hottest debate that I've ever been into as it was being made.
Yeah, it was hotly contested, but I will say I'm personally very happy with its outcome. It has a lot of good defensive abilities, and the capstone is very, very useful, albeit hard to use and understand well. So it's a really fun thing, and I'm glad that it's in the game the way it is currently.
Sure. The comment for the week: how much electricity could a level 10 wizard provide to a power grid?
6.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna say 6.
I would say
It's just facts.
get a sorcerer.
Yeah.
Get
I-
a
I-
wizard with
real
like
caster.
less power? That seems odd.
This question is literally the chapter in the DM's guide that we never got.
Fansite news: Mickey chronicles her latest ratings. You can read more about her blog. DDO Stream is your first stop to find DDO on Twitch. This week, Zerzmash leaves Lords in the Dust. Glyn supports Extra Life, and DDO PL runs its final Cleric Life. Also on Twitch, Newbie Cobber runs Feywild at Reaper 10. Hare Wolf raised money for Child's Play, and Lorelil sniffs Flower Sniffs. And on YouTube, DDO Dungeons and Dragons Online All Quests, which is the channel name, updates to include Feywild. Avian Lord 7090 does a long play, and Father and Son Gaming get a badge. And somehow, with 4 of the most prolific DDO streamers on my show, none of them were in that section of the show for a change. But you all Twitch, so you can watch all these guys play. If you're watching the show, watching the video, you can catch all their Twitch, YouTube, or Twitch URLs. They're all really complicated. It's twitch.tv, their name. So
If we
There's a
would
slash
all
in
have
there.
got line, if we would have all gotten line and just started off with like 1, 2, 3, and 4, we would have cleared this all up.
all right. DDOcast news. DDOCasplat and DDOcast proper probably won't have shows next week again because of Thanksgiving. But we'll be back the week after. And don't forget to check out D&D Night on DDO Stream if you want to check out some tabletop pen and paper. I'm in a few of those games myself. That's Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/DDO Stream. So with that, let's talk about Lightning Post. We did have Fuzzy Duck wrote in, said he's been loving the Feywild expansion. It looks gorgeous. The quests are interesting, though admittedly first-time runs can take a bit of figuring out. The wilderness area in particular is great. I like the return to the older style of walk-up landmarks since you can look at the list and get an idea of what you're looking for instead of hunting for little markers. Yes. Great mob density too. The augment system change is a welcome one, and having the effects being boosted to parity with Canvas crafting is really nice. The real victors with it are the elemental damage rubies, which now provide a much tastier bonus, which can really be significant, especially in heroic content. The minimum level 8 ones give 3 plus 3d6 are a particular favorite, as there are a handful of very nice named weapons in that area. Yeah. There you go. So I think we all kind of would agree with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff.
Rabble.
All right. So we're gonna review Fables of the Feywild. I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that we'll end up cutting this into at least 2 parts. So you have to wait a little bit for if you're listening to the produced and recorded show. If you're listening to live, you get the whole thing at once. Congratulations. Come watch us live at twitch.tv/DDOcast. Or check out the shows there, and you can get kind of the whole shebang. So yeah, Fables of the Feywild. Just to kind of set a little bit of expectations here, we're not going to review the pre-order stuff because we already did that. because that came with update 47. So we won't really have a lot of thoughts necessarily, or we won't intentionally go into a lot of detail about the Shifter or the Feydark Illusionist and that kind of stuff. But we're going to get into Fables of the Feywild. And I think maybe quick overall first impressions, kind of bigger picture, maybe headliner thoughts. What do you guys think about Fables of the Feywild?
I'll start. I know nothing about Feywild. I'm going to admit that right now, even though I'm an old pen and paper guy. So, what it is in pen and paper, I don't know. All I know of Feywild is what the devs, led up to it. So I admit that. Big picture, I liked it. I would recommend it. I think that the medium bundle is really awesome because, you get a fast horse on every tune and a level 5 healing hireling on every tune. So I think that was cool too. I think I probably set my expectations up a little too high because I think they hit home runs with Ravenloft and Sharn, and so I was expecting another home run, and I was left feeling, like I wanted more.
I like that. Let's see, Simeku Grogarian in the chat. Right as you started talking about it not being a home run, asked, "Is it a home run or a double?"
It was a double. See, and that's the thing. Doubles are good at bat, right?
It is.
But it's the 7th inning. We were all on our feet. The first 2 at bats were home runs. Now it's the 3rd at bat. 7th inning, we're all on our feet, expecting and wanting a home run, and they hit a double. A double's good, but I wanted a home run.
So to work this analogy just a little bit more, and I'm not a baseball person.
Work it hard.
You know what a double is and a home run is, though. Don't play.
Sure. But this is not the point. The point is that when the raid comes out, and all of a sudden they're throwing it back to home to tag out the runner, and it misses, and then it thanks to a bunch of errors, could it turn into a home run for you? Is that the part that's missing?
No.
You don't think so?
That could turn it into a triple.
Okay.
We should mention, if you're listening to this, in the future, this may be, the raid is not out yet, and we're not expecting the raid until next year. It doesn't. So to me, it doesn't make any sense to wait to look at the Fables of the Feywild until then.
I know Patrick appreciates my baseball analogies.
I love baseball. Baseball's great. So
I think we're getting off base here, though.
The answer to the chat is no. The raid is. It's not that it doesn't have anything to do with the quest storyline. The quests, the 2 chains. What is it? 9 quests, 9 or 10 quests. They have a contained storyline. The raid is supposed to be related to that storyline, much in the same way that the raid for Project Nemesis and Too Hot to Handle were related to what was going on, but were not. We're kind of a side story, as you will. Yeah. Let's see, Strimtom or Nimvind, what do you think, kind of bigger picture?
So for me personally, both with just the experience of going through it and talking to other people, overall, I would say this is probably my favorite of the DDO expansions so far.
Oh, interesting.
I think that the visual quality, they went above and beyond. The new monsters are much more interesting than some new monsters we've received before. Ravenloft, touted as being one of the best expansions, gave us Twig Blights, which are the worst monsters ever made in this video game. And this expansion gave us cool things like the Red Caps and the Displacer Beasts that are just these magical, fun things. The story is, so whimsical, and sometimes you often wonder if the characters even care about what's happening, about what's going around, which kind of makes it more onto the player to figure out what's doing it. And the whole idea behind Fey twisting means you're always incentivized to explore every nook and cranny to find every chest, even if you've done a quest 5, 6, 10 times. The only thing really I don't like about it right now is that I think that the heroic quests are just too hard, and I think it was a bad business decision. I don't know why they did that. But the epic quests are more tolerable than Ravenloft with less, or not Ravenloft, than Sharn with less annoying monsters. And so overall for me, it was just I'm going to call it a home run. Although I don't do baseball.
Nimvind?
I think it's terribly bland. I do have some nice things to say first, though. I believe that the new monsters that we got quite a bit of them, and new mechanics. It's nice that more potions have more things to do with the game. That's great. The mechanics with the Feywild, amazing. New augment system, new this. There's like the Fey twisted items, all that, great. I for some reason the last two expansions, of course, Ravenloft has a story that's been built upon for over 50 years, and then on top of that, you know, Sharn has a lot of importance to Eberron, but the Feywild story is all over the place when it comes to Feywild lore. Hersham is actually a Forgotten Realms Feywild character too, so I'm not clear why Eberron's involved, and I just didn't care. I didn't care why I was in this quest. I just wanted the items. Like I just was not. I didn't want to fight against an anti-party, a group formed by a villain in a dubious metropolis in a land that's conterminous with the plane of air of Eberron, or I'm not in a demi plane of dread. I'm just chasing some Forgotten Realms character into a plane that's not even supposed to be touching Eberron, and talking to a bunch of snobs that just don't care. They're the only reason they even like look at you is like, oh, you're a foreigner, you're not from around here. Like I'm playing Diablo 1 in DDO, like, welcome adventurer, go down this cave and find yourself a note from a devil from beyond the grave, and then put this gem in your pocket. And then at the end, you're like, hey, can I get my book back? I'll give you this needle. And he's like, dope. Yeah, here's some like bud. And you're like, oh, I don't drink. And then he's like, oh, okay. And then it's over. It's like there's no commitment. And then on top of a raid, on dot, we get one raid instead of two, and we have to wait more than a month to get it. And then on top of that, it has nothing to do with the story, so I don't give a crud about the story even more. It's not like Hersham's like, back, psych, I don't care, I want the pages back. No. And then like on top of that, there's just so much Thay Wizards of Red Wizards of Thay Easter egg everywhere, and you're like, okay, is this a Feywild or a Forgotten Realms expansion? What's going on here? It's all over the place, just not in my face.
Okay. I think for me,
baseball reference. Sorry.
I think for me, I'm kind of around where Voodoo is. I think like it's a solid pack. The loot is solid. It's well done. It didn't blow me away, but I mostly enjoy the content and stuff. So, I think it's right kind of in that nice middle ground that you were kind of saying. Let's talk about the storyline a little bit, because Nimvind was kind of there and talking about it.
Oh wait, Samius didn't give us his overview.
Oh, do we not get Samius' overview?
Am I not allowed to have 2 cents?
I want to hear you, Samius.
Have at it, man.
I want your 3 cents. Give me a whole nickel.
Samius, talk to me.
So I'm going to admit I haven't done Feywild as much as these guys have. Like I've watched Voodoo and Strim and Nim even do it several times, and I've only done it twice or 3 times, I think. And my experiences have varied wildly. For example, my first walkthrough with them, I was level 20, and we were doing them on Reaper 6. So I felt a little bit underpowered for such a situation, but they were interesting. And then I did them again solo, I think at level 8, right, on the last TR life. So I played with them on both the heroic and the epics, and I feel like they're reasonable quests. I think they're okay. I think there's some things that make them interesting and have a high replayability, like the two things that I love about DDO quests in particular is when I feel like I get to circumvent things by like making interesting character decisions, like Maze of Madness and Litany, those kind of things. Like if you can stealth correctly, you can stealth basically get through this room, or you can jump over these boxes, or whatever. And having options that use your skills, as well as having to be able to maneuver around to change the quest, is very nice. That gives me a bone in that scratches that itch, that makes me feel like I'm actually doing stuff besides running down a pre-made track to the end. So I like that a lot that they did that. However, and I realize I'm probably the minority of people, I get triggered visually with my migraines. The reason I play DDO over many other games is DDO does a very good job of not triggering my migraines. Feywilds, there's something in it that just kicks me right in the brain. I don't know what it is exactly, but it has happened to me, 3 streams? Basically, it's just gotten to the point where it's like, all right, guys, I'm sorry. I have to stop. I'm on the verge of wanting to die. There's something in there, and I'm not sure what it is, whether it's the bright colors moving around in the wrong way, or the stuff that floats around on the screen that's supposed to be whimsical and magical. But that graphically there's something in there. It is pretty. It is very pretty, but for the small group of the world, I think that has my issue. I think I will personally not be running it as much as I could because of that. That's it. Those are my 2 cents. Third cent, the gear is nice.
Sure. Let's. You guys want to talk about the storyline or the quest first?
I can do it all.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the storyline, because it does have a through narrative. Although much like Sharn, I think it's kind of their own created narrative, not like Ravenloft, which is a much more, they're pulling from a much more scripted story arc and whatnot. I generally liked it. I didn't have the same experience that Nimvind did of it being all over the place, but that's probably because I don't spend a whole lot of time in lore and studying lore and have a really good baseline for all of that. But I kind of have been waffling, though, back and forth. I wonder if they kind of, like, the mystery of what's going on gets solved so fast relative to, I think, what I was expecting in terms of a mystery. Because the storyline starts off with who stole these codex pages, and I feel like that question gets answered pretty quickly. A lot quicker than I think I was expecting.
Yeah, for me, when I saw the initial story, it was less about how that there's mystery villains, because the villains are in front of you all of the time. You run into Hearsome many times in quests and in the wild, and he gives you bad vibes right away.
It's like the second character you run into when you go into the
exactly
area.
And kind of the baseline behind the story is less so that I think it's about like a big mystery villain, because there is a mystery villain in the mysterious stranger who we don't know much about, which we'll probably learn about in the raid. But I think for the most part, when I see that, I think to myself, it's more about the world that we are intruding into that we don't really have any status in. So why, people are worried about Lord Arden, but why should anyone care about what we have to say or have to do about it? Because we're some outsiders. If anything, we would be suspicious in the first place, because why would they just trust another Archfey, whom everyone seems to like? So it's about like proving your worth and then eventually kind of, taking the guy down.
Okay, so going in, with my level 8 lore master skills, I was like, oh, this place is pretty, but where are we? Yeah, Feywild is a mirror plane, just like the Shadowfell, but it's a mirror plane of a specific prime material plane. Is this supposed to be the King's Forest? Are we in Forgotten Realm or Eberron? Why did I enter from Eberron? All right, okay, let's just move on. And then we meet an Arc Fae from the Forgotten Realms Feywild right away. An Arc Fae are so intrinsically attached to the Feywild, which is a land of pure magic and positive energy, that if you're intrinsically attached to it, like the Arc Fae or the Aishi, you can literally tell a piece of ground to move up and become a wall. Like you can tell a tree to move out of your way. You can breathe. You're the Matrix. You're Neo from the Matrix. So there's this an Arc Fae hanging out with a bunch of Saturn. You're like, okay, that's the fool, the Hershep of Forgotten Realms Feywild. That's great. He would be fooling around, but he's so powerful. Why can't he just banish us or do anything? Why didn't he change the weather in the winter area? Oh, he's contested with the other Arc Fae. They're Arc Fae. They could just do it. It's like hacking a hacker. You can do it, and put it back. Okay, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. So at the end, they try to tie it up with, oh, this possibly could have all been a Twins Peaky and David Lynchian illusion made by Hersham. He summons two people that you've been interacting with, and he's like, they're just illusions. This could all be illusions. I'm like, oh, great. So this Arc Fae decided to make a bunch of illusions. Like, he could literally turn trees into giant fish, and this is how he's using his Arc Fae thing. It's just some very bland magic. The story and the individuals that belong to it, if you look at it in lore effect, it's just so it's so Disney. It's just so washed down. Like the Prince of Frost, they kind of did touch on why he's the Prince of Frost and all that, but they didn't tell you who's his mother is. And there's just so much important. That character in itself has whole books of lore, and I felt like they kind of just made him into this emo, and they're like, okay, he's in his palace of frost, and he's gonna cry over his ex, and Hersham is just a guy that wants to go back to the original party. All these new wave kids ruining the disco, and I don't know. It just didn't, like, it felt like we were touching it felt like someone read two paragraphs in two different books about Feywild in two different editions, and they're like, I know everything, we got this in the bag. And it just really disappointing to someone who watched the positive material plane of energy from first edition evolve into Feywild in the fourth edition, and turned into a substantially actually really cool place in fifth edition. And then it just been turned into something that's just pretty much a giant teaser of Forgotten Realms expansion, because that's what it is. If you think of the Black Unicorns, if you watch my stream, I did a whole stream on unicorn lore, which they got wrong. The unicorn tail is all off. That's a horse with a horn on it. It's not a unicorn. It's a chimera.
You did a whole stream on unicorn lore?
Yeah. They basically looked at unicorns like the same way an age 11 girl would be with her lunchbox, and they're like, that's a unicorn. Like, no, that's a Barnum and Bailey horse with a horn. And so they fudged that up, but like, whatever, I could forgive them.
But you know what? Our unicorns look identical to the unicorns in the 5th edition monster manual. So if that's the D&D unicorn, then that's the D&D unicorn.
Oh, does it? I haven't.
Identical.
Yep.
Well, that's what. Oh, there's actually an excuse that the CEO of D&D comes up with, that they outsource their artistry, but they're supposed to have lions' tails, the same tails as lions. So like what the illustration shows and what the book writes doesn't match up all the time, and so. Unicorn wrong, Forgotten Realms all over the place. It doesn't feel like a mirror of anything that we've read. Like, we enter it through the harbor, right? Then theoretically, like, if it is the Feywild, that should all be water, but it kind of is all wilderness, right? The castle area is beautiful, but it kind of sucks that we like it's somewhere in between the public zone. Oh wait, no, we're talking about story. Let's go back to the story. It's crap.
All right. Well, can I ask a couple of probing questions just to clarify, because I'm not a lore guy. So,
Okay.
because DDO is not canon as per any of the lore. That's already been clearly stated because we can travel between Eberron and the Forgotten Realms. So right away, everything not canon.
There's actually a canonical lore reason why we can.
I'm sure there is. I'm just saying that officially it's not like a canon source of lore, right? So and also in terms of the Feywild, the only thing I do know is because I talked to some of the designers in my interview, and what they said is specifically Knockback. What he said was that the Thalanis is like the mirror plane of Eberron, and we're not going to Thalanis. That will be another time, but instead we're going to a separate Feywild. So that would be why it's not a direct mirror of Eberron itself, because we're not going to the mirror. We're going to another more generic version of the Feywild, so they could tell different types of stories. So I was wondering, I don't know much about the Feywild personally. Is it possible, like, is there teleportation magic on the Feywild, or is that not a thing? Like, is it possible that there could be a door in the harbor that then teleports us to a different place in the Feywild than specifically that exact spot, or do they not have that type of magic there?
Well, Thalanis was nicknamed Feywild in 4th edition for a minute. And Thalanis is not a mirror plane, but conterminality of the Eberron. Eberron has that specific thing where things can become coterminous and overlay. But now Feywild, it's a mirror plane though. So like where we are in Feywild, the plane that it's a Feywild of so that's why I was thinking, like, is this the King's Forest? Like, I could kind of dig it if they explain it that we're in the King's Forest, because Hersham is a Forgotten Realms Faerun, like character in their Feywild lore, and we do have Evening Star. It's just the Eladrin holds can pretty much be anywhere because Eladrin magic. So, but there is teleportation magic. Yeah, that could be a thing. And another thing is the reason why Eberron is not attached to the DDO multiverse is because of the Sybaris ring, a thing that blocks it from the multiverse. And you can actually affect that, which Lolth did with the Spinner of Shadows, to open it to the multi-dimension. So theoretically, we could actually get Asmodeus to invade, or a foreign god to invade, to take all this the power of faith. Like Eberron is like an oil field to gods. Like if they can get in there, there's all these things that they can power their domains through their worship. So theoretically, because of the menace of the Underdark thing, we could have these fantastical. Oh, it's snap crackling. Sorry.
I want to take a moment to kind of get off of the lore bent though, and come back to storyline and what we got for Fables of the Feywild. So does anyone else want to jump in on the storyline and what they think of the story arc?
I didn't, I'm not crazy about it. It just wasn't, it didn't pull me in. I wasn't really interested in it. I kind of feel like, oh, okay, there's Hersam, there's the Lord of Frost, there's Lord Arden, and who are these guys again? Like, I just don't care, That's
exactly
how I feel about the storyline,
I hear you.
And I'm so tired of the Codex page thing. Can we move past that, please? I'm done.
That's a MacGuffin. That's
Done
a
with
MacGuffin.
It is.
That's it.
There are plenty other MacGuffins. It's Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you can go with the most cliche stuff. Cliche is delicious in Dungeons and Dragons. We don't need to keep revisiting this Codex crap.
Samus, any thoughts on the storyline?
No, I mean, overall, I felt like it was the crumbs that I needed to get through the quest. I'm not really the lore or the storyline guy. Every once in a while, I like to get one here and there, but for me, that part of it's not the part that I particularly find interesting.
Strimtom, did you have anything else you want to say on the storyline?
Oh, well, it's mostly that I do kind of agree that I think that overall, the storyline is not really impactful. You go from, like, you kind of just paint Hersam into a corner, and he's like, well, all right, I guess I'll just break off my big deal and call up my plans or whatever. So it kind of doesn't have like a big climactic ending. But when I think about each quest individually, they're all kind of like just nice miniature adventures that make you feel like you're like they don't feel like Eberron quests or other quests in the game because of the way the characters and the people act. So I found like on an individual, like a quest by quest basis, each story was nice with the through line. But the overarching story, it doesn't really matter too much to me.
Can I make an addendum? I agree with Strimtom. Like each individual
Yeah.
quest is fantastic. The art is beautiful. Like don't get me wrong, I don't hate Feywild. I look at it in a lore standpoint, it just cringes me.
I liked your kind of how you put it, Strimtom, and I think you kind of clarified it for me too. Like when I think about the individual quests, like what's going on in the quest, kind of generally the story of each quest makes a lot of sense. But when you put it in the larger narrative, I'm not sure the crumbs, as Samus put it, really kind of connect very well. I think that's a good way of putting it. Like the character motivations seem to be clearly defined. Like I didn't have any problem figuring out why characters were acting in certain ways, except maybe the Prince of Frost. Like I understood what Hirsam's motivations were, and I understood kind of where like each of the quests individually. But when you start putting the pieces together as a whole, you kind of start to have a lot more plot holes and question marks.
So I'm going to interject one other thing here just to kind of mess everybody up. Trying to understand the Fae in particular is not something we can do.
Sure.
Right? So you could also, if they wanted to, they could add more layers to this onion down the road to just, this is like one small part of what's going on with the Fae. So even if it doesn't completely, you like see all the motivations or whatever, you probably don't. It's probably good. Like in theory, if this was going on in a living world or whatever, the motivations would be many layers deep. So like, I don't know. I don't need that much to go from here A to B to C to D to E to get around through all the quests and have fun. I realize there are people that do, but just keep in mind if you're finding it unsatisfactory, you just have to like give a little bit deeper faith and keep a little bit more of that. Like not everything is up front. It's kind of, to me, it's like watching what's the first of the middle release of the Jedi movies, right? The one with Jar Jar Binks. Like no one really likes that. The Phantom Menace. No one really loves that one that much until you hear the theory about Jar Jar Binks was supposed to be the Sith Lord, and then all of a sudden those trilogies are amazing, right? It's that. What you have right now on the front face is Phantom Menace, and you're like, but at some point someone going to give you the correct piece of bits in there, and everything's going to click into place, and you'll be like, aha, I get it. At least that's how I feel.
Okay. Let's get into the quests a little bit. How did you guys feel about the quest? Do you have some favorites, some highlighted moments, or some strong dislikes?
Ooh, for me, I laughed my ass off at the gingerbread man boss.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even play. I was laughing so hard. That was what a simple but just brilliant moment. I thought it was so funny. I loved another highlight in the quest. I loved the pseudo dragon lair. It was gorgeous. It was exactly what I imagined a dragon's lair would be like in Dungeons and Dragons, and I loved how that ending plays out with a little hide and seek, something different. I thought that was really cool. I also enjoyed the werewolf quest where the werewolf guards are patrolling and you have to avoid them. And when we did our first look video, we actually took time to avoid them and completed the quest that way. So I thought those things were cool and memorable.
Yeah, I totally agree on the werewolf thing. People pop in my chat every once in a while being like, oh, I want to play DDO stealth. I'm like, you can stealth this whole quest. It's awesome. Like, it's so cool. And it's very engaging. Like, you don't have to if you don't want to, but the opportunity was there and it fit really well.
When it comes to the quest being individuals and mechanically, I love like I said earlier when I was on my crappy rant about lore, is that there's parts where it touches the quest being based off of Fables. really love. I love the troll under the bridge. I love the gingerbread man. That like you can't catch me. I'm a gingerbread man, but no, this is a gingerbread tank. And then I just love all these things that are just like the three bears, right? Goldilocks and the three bears. I get all. I'm like, oh wow, it's just so amazing. All the tiny mechanics and Easter eggs. Honestly, this is an expansion of mechanics and really fun. Really, like if you just don't take it serious, and um, there's just so much to be had. This is definitely a welcoming to a future new meta. You can see that the game is going direction here, and it's beautiful.
Oh, you know what else I liked? The switching of the signs in the Endless Revels. Like,
Yep.
just like, oh, you got to distract the Sphinx so you can take the sign. You move the books out of order and he wants to go fix them. And then, the guy that you blow up with the pyrotechnics, like that was just, it was whimsical and fun. And and the fact that you just changed the sign, like, look, it's not this place anymore. The sign doesn't say that. Like, I loved that.
I
Yeah.
love the social interactions that you can use social skills and change the outcome of the quest.
Well, I one of my favorite interactions that just made me straight laugh out loud on my live stream was in the quest where you have to rescue the Viscount and you're trying to get into his tower and you have to get an apple from a tree. And so when you go up to the tree, if you fail, I think there's like a diplomacy check you can do. And if you fail the diplomacy check, it just says the tree resists your attempts and acts like a tree, doing nothing. I just thought that was so funny. Like, why is it in there? And then you can sing to it and it gets happy and it gives you its apple or what have you. I thought it was just, there's so many moments like that all over the Feywild where the writing, especially with the egg from the Dragon Quest, where you have to crack the egg and then one of the options is admit defeat because it's too much. And it's just delightful. There's so many good laughs in this.
Yeah, I found the quests in general like had the devs, it said in the interviews kind of across the board, one of the things they were really trying to capture was how creatures in the Feywild act, in that they're kind of looking for distractions, right? And it's kind of much more of a more social than maybe we're kind of used to. And I feel like they really captured that part of the quests across the board. You talked about interacting with the tree. There's also interacting with all of these mimics, which from a mechanic standpoint wasn't really like a quest that I really enjoyed, like trying to find which chest is not a mimic. But I think at the same time also kind of really captures a lot of what they were going for in terms of having it be a little bit more interactive as opposed to being hack and slashy. And I think that really kind of came across. Voodoo was talking about the dragons there. Like, I really liked how if you kind of look around in there, you can see bits and pieces from other questing areas, and like it didn't feel like they just threw a bunch of stuff in there. Like it felt like someone actually took the time to craft that area and put kind of I don't want to say Easter eggs necessarily, but kind of callbacks and stuff in there. So I really kind of feel like they achieved that aesthetic for the different quests and whatnot.
So I think most people agree, and I agree as well. The needle in the Fey stack is very, very good. Like it does things that I find interesting. It's probably one of my more favorite ones. But for me, the one that I love the most is the Knight Who Cried Windmill. It's so simple,
yeah.
but yet like ridiculous in a way that just made me go, because I'm about ready to start DMing here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm just like, I cannot wait to put this kind of encounter inside of my upcoming campaign. Like, it's just, they hit everything like really interesting to me in there, with the windmill doing the windmill thing. I don't want to give a lot of spoilers for people. I know there's quite a few people who haven't got it. But and then how it can continue on past that point for like some fun interactions as well. Like I love that particular one. I could do that one over and over again. I don't know if it actually gives any loot or does anything useful, but I just love doing that particular quest. I just, it captures the giggles, and I think that's the thing that people are also trying to say, is that the moments that make the quests special are in front and foremost. Like if Ravenloft is the best expansion, which is what I would score it as, I would score that Ravenloft 10 out of 10. Sharn like maybe a 9 out of 10, and I'd put this thing probably at like an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. But the moments in this one, like individual moments, are off that chart in here, because you're going to have moments where you're just like, what the S? And you'll just be completely taken by surprise. Where Ravenloft, Sharn, you can foresee what's coming, right? Like you can follow what's going along. You're like, okay, we're going to get attacked by Strahd now. Rah, scary vampire. And instead, it's like, here's a clever moment, or here's some time that you can socially interact, or you can hit a thing. Like it's got magical moments in it, and that is why this expansion has quality, as opposed to like some of the other things that we kind of harped on a little bit. The magical moments are real.
Yeah. I will say the other thing that I've noticed kind of as a through line through a lot of the quests is they're very non-linear. You know, I look at Ravenloft and Sharn and Feywild, and Ravenloft was generally pretty non-linear as the quests went. There were a lot of different directions you could go and whatnot. Sharn, I feel like, kind of swung pretty hard in the very linear direction. Right? There's not a lot of places where you can go different ways and kind of go about solving the quest in different ways. It's that you pretty much run down the path and do the things. Feywild jumped even harder than Ravenloft into the non-linear direction, which I think there's a place for both. Like, I'm not trying to say that as a negative, but just as a kind of observation, it tended to be very, very non-linear, and in fact, sometimes I think it was to its detriment. The kind of capstone quests, is it immortality demands or immortality lessons in immortality, something like that. Like there's a whole section. I mean, there's two kind of big, large sections that, but one of them in particular, like you only really need to go into like the first 10% of the area to do what you need to do to finish the quest, and then this whole other section that's kind of mazy and really confusing and almost doesn't really seem to have a point in the quest.
So I thought this at first too, because I explored it, but as it turns out, if you pick the wrong item for
Right,
yourself,
I know that.
it jumps in there and you have to escape.
Yeah.
It's actually beautiful because it's one of those quests where you can take 2 hours in or 12 minutes in. Like I got it down to 12 minutes.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of another observation I generally had. In terms of quests I didn't like, the underwater quest, which I think probably has more to do with the fact that they still haven't made underwater combat enjoyable for me. It still really feels really clunky. I mean, a whole bunch of spells don't work, which I understand, you're underwater, but it's also kind of a little frustrating if that's kind of your bread and butter. So I didn't really care for that. Like I said, the areas that are really mazy and big and don't really seem to have a clear reason to go into them, unless you do something wrong. But even then, like there's all sorts of areas that you just don't really need to go anyways. So
I actually kind of like the underwater quest, and I know a lot of people hate them, but this particular one, and I'm not a big fan of them in general, but this particular one, I don't know, there's something about just being like just under the surface in these like twisting caverns, and you could look up and see the surface of the water. It just struck me as kind of cool, and kind of how I have imagined, some of my own underwater, homebrew stuff that I've made. So maybe it just struck a personal chord, but I didn't mind it, and the fact that it wasn't like if it had been super long and
mm-hmm.
then I probably would have hated it. But it wasn't that long, so I appreciate one shorter underwater quest. And I also want to say that from a metagaming perspective, I like that there are some shorter quests in here and some good like XP quests for like that level 5-6 range. We already have a lot of good XP quests at level 5, but level 6 we don't. There's some in there that are going to be good XP per minute, and I think there's going to be some good legendary dailies in there too.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the place that you go after you get level 8, after you knock out Three Barrel Cove.
Yep, that's exactly what I
It's
did this
perfect.
life.
Yeah,
You know what's
perfect
funny?
for that.
I don't think there's a quest in the Feywild that I don't like. There's a part of a quest. We were talking about needle and a face stack. I really don't like going through all those chests. I love the end fight though. Like I can't hate any of these quests. I just dislike one part of one quest.
Yeah, if I had to pick a quest that I found wasn't very inspiring, it's the underwater quest. And actually, I agree with Voodoo that I don't dislike underwater quests. I think the idea is cool, and the cavern nature of it is that I don't like monsters that you can't really interact with, and that's the entire design purpose of Kelpies. They have fortification. They can't be intimidated. They are immune to half of the forms of crowd control. You can't trip them. You can't stun them. You can't really interact with them other than hitting them for direct damage for the most part. And if you are a melee character and get close, you take nearly 100% of your health in damage over the course of 2 seconds from their AoE grass that they throw out underneath their feet. I just absolutely despise that. They're my least favorite monster right
But
now.
at least they're not a Thrackhound, right? Like, come on. We all know Thrackhounds are the worst. Kelpies can be a strong number 2, but
Yeah, I think that my dislike for that quest is less about the quest and more about the mechanics of underwater combat. Like it's still really clunky and like you said, it doesn't lend itself well to fighting Kelpie. Just because
It sucks in heroics, especially when you're playing a fire sorc or a druid, where your first 2 slots are like that fire create fire thing. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful though. The map layout is basically Cage Beast without the optional area to the right, and so that it was really easy for me to navigate.
Geezer Hermit's throwing out flame skulls is the worst monster in the game. I don't think he's wrong. Well, let's kind of maybe turn the conversation a little bit into the mechanics. We've kind of touched on some of them, and I know Voodoo's got some that he kind of wants to pull out. Feywild has a bunch of kind of different mechanics that are parts of their quests. I think we kind of all agree that the social interaction stuff is really interesting, for the most part. But Voodoo, I know you've got some thoughts on this. Why don't you start us off here?
Well, I already covered the things that I like mechanically. Like I said, I really liked avoiding the werewolf guards. That was pretty neat. The hide and seek ending of the pseudo dragon end part, and then I liked that there was the one quest where you had the loot to break out walls. That was kind of fun to try to find. Does the floor break out here? Does the wall break out here? I wasn't crazy about like the /say mechanics.
Oh, I really like that mechanic. I thought that was really neat.
It
felt like your characters were actually, you had to say the magic words to do something. It would have been cool though if they had a mechanic where you could use in-game voice chat to do it, but
Yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, when they first introduced that mechanic in the Druid's Gatekeeper chain, like, everyone avoided that optional. And then they're like, hey, this thing that everyone avoided? Let's just make it a huge part of this expansion real quick. And let's see who likes it there, because they're ignoring it here. Like, that's just great business.
I liked it.
I like the concept. The execution, like maybe there's some parts of it that I've been missing, but I've just found it to be kind of clunky. Like I would use it and then it wouldn't work, and then someone else used it. And, oh, what'd you do? Like, well, this is what I did. I'm like, that's the same thing I did. How come it didn't work for me? Like that's kind of been my experience with that mechanic. Like it for some reason it doesn't seem to be consistently working for me.
So, a couple of things about it. One, I don't like the idea that they are using a chat-based system when we're having chat server issues. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do that. And have like a major expansion being written around the time that all these things develop and happen, and nobody except apparently me can put one and one together. And two, if you're like me and you've actually won the worst speller on the planet award, when you have to type something, even as something as simple as like a dozen or bird, okay, I can misspell anything. I misspelled my own name wrong one time, so I dislike that. Only once. Teach me once, shame on me. But it's like, to me, that kind of stuff is problematic for other reasons outside of the actual interacting with it. That being said, if there's the people who are good at spelling and don't seem to have problems with interacting with the chat, it seems to be fine. But for me, soloing those kind of things can be problematic.
Yeah, that's a good point. And some of those words that they're asking you to type are not necessarily easy words to spell, right?
I mean, everything's hard for me to spell, so right. I don't know. I don't know what regular people do. I swear to God, I'm just enough dyslexic to mess everything up.
I coincidentally studied the lore of the dictionary, so I don't have this issue.
Yeah. I mean, there is no penalty for failure, and you can copy and paste from like the chat log what the words are to get them to work.
That is how I got through a couple of them, but the specifically the one that I'm thinking of, where you have to say the answer to a riddle, for example,
and it gives you a certain number of tries.
Yeah, and you have a certain number of tries. Yeah, that one in particular stand out to me as like a moment where I had anti-fun. Because, again, specifically my particular problem.
This is like old school text adventure gaming right here. You know?
I really sucked at those
pick
things.
Up chair.
I can't type.
Grab sword.
Yeah.
A total aside down that rabbit hole. If you haven't watched the documentary High Score on Netflix, I recommend it.
A mechanic I really like that it seems like we're glossing over is that they added more fun with statuses. This is like a like, you know, they're like, oh, new augments. Well, we had like the pixie dust stacks and like new uses for potions to cure the stuff from the Fomorian giants and the bleeding effect and all that. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. Like, it's been a while since we had something besides mummy rot, disease number 3. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we kind of got a little addition to our combat mechanics. I hope that they add on in the future.
I think maybe we'll end this week's show there, and we'll be back next week to continue our review about this. Again, if you're watching this live, hang around. You get the whole thing. We'll be right back in a second. So let's just kind of go around the table. Nimvind, what do you want to plug, sir?
I would like to plug my new hat company and also twitch.tv/Nimvind. And of course, you can also look me up as Nimvind Dirge Singer on YouTube.
And Samus?
So every place that's interesting and exciting, I'm at Samius Gurobo, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, etc., whatever, it doesn't matter. So if you are interested in what's going on, that's where you could find me.
And Strimtom?
Twitch.tv/Strimtom, YouTube.com/Strimtom, Twitter.com/Strimtom. And if you're out here and you're like, man, you know what, this guy's cool, and I wish I had some fresh threads that I could wear, Strimtom.com/merch. You're all your Strimtom related needs. That's where you can find me.
And Vooduspyce.
You can find me on YouTube at Vooduspyce, where I have nearly 1,000 DDO videos, quest walkthroughs, raid guides, crafting tutorials, and much more. I'm also Vooduspyce on Twitch, where you can find me live streaming nearly every day, sometimes with Nimvind.
You're still only nearly at 1,000 videos. Like, I think we talked
It's
like a month ago.
965. It's 965.
Come on,
I'm
man.
getting there.
Let's next time you're on
I
the
know.
show, I want it to be over 1,000 videos. That's
Hey,
your
I'm still
homework.
waiting for my DDOcast coffee mug. So
We still need to make that tutorial on how to hit enter
You gotta
on
get one.
DDO.
Good one.
Actually, I think they're on the front of the store and DDOcast stuff. There you go. They are, I believe, selling them again. Like, I don't know if they resolved the issue they had with whatever they didn't like about copyright stuff, but I think you can go back and buy them now. So you can get there from our website, DDOCast.com. Thanks, guys, for being here today, and thanks for listening to the show, and to all the contributors for DDOcast, and to Standing Stone Games, the Wizards of the Coast, and to Cyber Ears. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage, or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. Hit us up at ddocast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can leave a comment. You can ask a question if you'd like to hear us answer that, or maybe there's a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi. Leave a comment. Email us, ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media for the latest cast updates. At DDOcast on Twitter is the best place. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.